The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the speakers or authors and do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions held by the producers of this broadcast. The material herein is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome to Afterlife Radio. I'm Kalila Smith, coming to you live from New Orleans, the mystical land of voodoo and spirits. I'm going to be exploring the mysterious world of shadow people this morning. And at the top of the hour, we're going to explore a little bit further into this week's advice to budding mediums. But let's first say hello to my co-host, coming to you live from Cornwall in the UK. That's England to a lot of you. The inventor of television psychics, Mr. Billy Roberts. Hey, Billy, how you doing?
Hi, Kalila. It's nice to be with you again.
It is wonderful to have you here, as always. And it is a lovely day today. So we're going to be talking about a number of things. I know you're going to be talking a little bit later on about the aura, which is an extremely fascinating subject, and how it manifests in the consciousness. But first, I have a question for you, because as you are aware, and I'm sure you as well, have a lot of paranormal groups and people who are in paranormal groups on your social media accounts. And I constantly see people posting about their questions and concerns about shadow people. Shadow people cropped up many years ago. It wasn't something that we talked about in the 70s or 80s for sure, but it cropped up a few years back. And, you know, people are still very confused about what they are. And many people are afraid of them and think they might be even something demonic. What's your opinion of that?
Well, the thing is, shadow people is not so much known in this country. You very rarely hear the term shadow people. But I am quite certain that they're a manifestation of spirit. Could be a spirit that's not fully developed spiritually. But a lot of people who have clairvoyance, but it's not been developed fully, often describe these shadowy forms. Now, the one thing in my experience, they can't harm you. Spirit cannot harm a physical person. They can frighten you, but usually they're very mischievous. Now, I know that a few people have said to me that when they've lost, their father has passed away that morning or that night, they've seen a shadowy form in the middle of the night and assumed that it was their father. Assumed quite right as well, rightly, because often when a person does not know a great deal about spiritual matters, when they pass over, they don't suddenly attain this knowledge. They still have a lack of it. And sometimes they will manifest, usually in a shadowy way. But it's a manifestation, I think, of spirit.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Yes, I encountered one many, many years ago on an investigation, and it really frightened me. I was in a costume closet of an old theater, and it was kind of funny because I had my paranormal people there, and I had two guys with cameras and the night shot, and I saw something move, and I asked them both, I said, "Did you see that?" And one of them said, "Yeah, I see it all right." And I said, "What is it?" And he says, "You don't know?" And I said, "No, I don't." And I said, "Why don't you get in there and get a closer look?" And he said, "You get in there and get a closer look." And I said, "I don't have the camera." And before I could say anything else, he slapped that camera in my hand and he pushed me into the closet and slammed the door. And that thing moved across the screen. And that, I was never, ever afraid of anything prior to that. But in that moment, I got a chill and my heart started racing because I didn't know what that thing was or where it was going. But, later I had a couple of instances where people very dear to me had passed, and they appeared initially as shadows. One was a very good friend of mine 8 years ago, and he appeared in my room, and I could see the outline. I could see that it was a man standing there, and it was about his same height as my friend, but I didn't know that he had passed, so I didn't realize it was him. And then about 8 months later, when my daughter passed, a friend of mine stayed the night, one night, and she stayed on the sofa. She told me the next day that she saw a shadow that was about the same size as Stephanie get up from Stephanie's chair and walk across the kitchen and then disappear. So I began to wonder if maybe this was, possibly a manifestation level of newly departed spirits that didn't quite know how to present themselves yet, hadn't really learned how to manipulate their energy. What's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, this is what I think. I think also the when somebody has passed over, as I've just said, if they don't have a great awareness of the environment they've moved to, they often manifest as a shadowy form. But it doesn't have to be an individual spirit. I mean, a lot of people have had the experience of walking into a room in an old house, or even not an old house, not so old, where there's been a kind of a mist or vapor in the corner of the room, a darkness. And you can spend probably after 5 minutes, this vaporous or this vapor or this shadow will disappear. You think it's an optical illusion, but often it's a manifestation of spirit. It can be a sort of a mass that's built up over time and will appear as a shadowy form. Usually poltergeists. I've had an experience in Liverpool many years ago where I was called to a business premises where there'd been some kind of fatality, a murder in the 1920s. And what I noticed about this room, there were no windows in it. The windows had been bricked up for some reason over the years, and they were using it as a storeroom. But there was this very, very heavy feeling that had built up. And when I spent some time there, it had lighting, strip lighting, and I sat in the room, and although it was very, very bright, within 5, maybe 10 minutes, there was this sort of a darkness that pervaded the room. It wasn't just a psychological thing. It was a visual thing that I could see. And it was very, very frightening at that point. So, I mean, being a medium or being involved in the paranormal, as well as I do, you have to prepare yourself for all eventualities. Anything can happen. Even in places of enjoyment, there's something called a clone ball that very few people know about. It's an occult term, but a clone ball is the manifestation of a sort of a poltergeist, but it's a place that manifests in places of enjoyment, like in theaters or places where children have been played in a nursery over the years. And this is a pocket of energy or a focus of energy that when it's left, it will metamorphose into some kind of poltergeist, which is a wrong term really, because it's not malevolent. It's just very playful, and it can disrupt the whole atmosphere. So clone ball is something that people should be aware of, which is quite an inoffensive form. It's not a spirit, but it's a collection of energy.
Interesting. That's very, very interesting. And I think you had said at one time that you've seen shadows, like multitudes of them. Is that correct?
Yeah. When I was a musician in the 60s. Before I went to live in France, I was coming home one particular night from a friend's house. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning in the winter, and I'd see all these shadowy forms running very quickly in front of me across my path. And they made me a little bit nervous because I didn't quite understand what they were. But then they'd come behind me and they'd whisper in my ear, which quickened my step towards my home. But usually, quite a few times, in total darkness, you can see these shadowy forms. But they're harmless, and they are a manifestation of spirit, but not always aware of your presence. they're sometimes passing through from one place to another, one dimension to another. It's interesting stuff, just talking about it.
Yes, it is. It is, and but people do get frightened by it, so that's good. That might clarify things for a lot of people out there who have questions about that sort of thing. But you're going to talk to us today about auras, and that's extremely interesting because when I teach Mediumship 101, that's one of the first things that I introduce people to is the aura, because it does play an important role. And you're going to tell us what role it plays in manifesting consciousness.
Stay tuned for more Afterlife Radio.
Submitted for your approval. New Orleans. Seductive, magical, mysterious, and haunted. There is no place on this earth with as much ghost and vampire activity as New Orleans. Imagine, if you will, a tour that takes you to sites in the French Quarter of actual documented hauntings. The Haunted History Tour is just that tour. Every day, every night, all year round. This tour has been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN, and it's available to you. Are there ghosts and vampires in the French Quarter? Find out by taking the tour that everyone is talking about, the Haunted History Tour. For more information, call Haunted History Tours at 861-2727. That's 861-2727. This is not a Halloween spookhouse. This is real.
You're listening to Afterlife Radio.
And we are back. Now, Billy is going to talk to us a little bit about the aura, because this is a very important and very fascinating subject. Billy, talk to us a little bit about the aura. I think you said something about it even manifesting consciousness, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But the layman will even use the word aura as a descriptive term. He will say, or she will say, this house has an aura of peace, or that person has an aura of serenity and spirituality. But the word aura is a lot more than what we think. Today, it's a scientific as well as a metaphysical phenomenon, because a great deal of research has been done into the manifestation of the aura, what it is and what it isn't. But the human form is an electromagnetic unit of incredible power, drawing in energy, transmuting it, and discharging it. And it's contained within its own spectrum of color and light. Now, the aura is a manifestation of something. We don't know really what it is, but in scientific terms, they refer to it as human bioluminescence. It's an optical phenomenon that's seen in some deep-sea aquatic creatures, the sort of a light around a fish or a light around a person. The aura is best described as a vaporous mass of electromagnetic particles surrounding every living thing. Now, we know, don't we, that everything has a life, albeit in some things at a lower level. But the aura itself, the manifestation of the aura, is quite important because it's the medium through which spirit people will communicate to the individual. Now, the aura changes with every passing thought, every feeling, and even the food you eat will have an effect on the aura. A person who is unwell will have a very depleted aura. It will not be as vibrant as a person who is in good health. And one of the ways we can, some people say, well, I've never seen the aura. How do I know it exists? Well, we know that Semyon and Valentina Kiln, sometime in the 1930s, developed a crude apparatus that enabled them to photograph the aura in a monochrome photograph emanating from the hands. Now, they believed that the emanations of energy from the hands were in some way connected to certain zones in the body. And it was used by a lot of practitioners as a diagnostic tool. And then Walter Kiln, he was an electrician, radiologist in St. Thomas's Hospital in London, England. He developed something which was referred to as the Kiln screen by using two screens made out of glass, and they were interjected with a dikyanin dye, a coal tar dye, he knew that if he put the person in front of it with a very bright light behind, it would show a radiation of energy emanating from the person's body. Now, he too was an innovation, and his invention was actually used as a diagnostic tool by a lot of practitioners in the day. So the aura can tell us a great deal about a person. It can tell us what they're thinking, where they're going, where they've been. And a lot of psychics will work through the aura without even realizing it. So the aura is a medium through which a lot of information is gleaned. It's a database of information. Now, if you're interested in seeing the aura, if you take 2 pips, 2 seeds from a fresh apple, and place the seeds on a white piece of paper in fairly subdued light, and you stare at the seeds for a minute or so, within moments, you'll see a sort of a glow moving around the pips in a clockwise motion. Now, if you take those pips, which the glow is very bright, if you put them away in an envelope for a couple of hours and bring them out again and place them on the piece of paper, fairly close to each other, you'll see that the glow has diminished. That light has dimmed. And that represents a dying person or a person who is in poor health. And then the amazing thing is, if you take other pips from another fresh apple and place them close to the old pips, within moments you'll see a strange phenomenon, a very unusual phenomenon. And this is the energy from the new pips reaches out to the old pips like an extension in an effort to revitalize them. And in fact, this is the way the aura works with people who are in the healing profession, because we're giving something of ourselves to somebody who is not well. But the aura is amazing. It's an absolutely amazing thing. And that's my take on the aura.
Wow. Wow, that is amazing. So it's more than just seeing a halo around people. I know a lot of people see colors. I've never seen really colors, except in a rare occasion. I might see a little bit of color, but usually most people can see that initial illumination outlining the body. We were experimenting with that back when I was a teenager. We'd see if we could see each other's aura. And that's really fascinating about the pits. That's very interesting. I'd never heard of that. That's a great experiment to do, folks. Try it. Get yourself some apple seeds and stick them there and try this, because that's interesting. And when lots of times when you do these little experiments, you can see how this happens, and it kind of makes it more understandable. I know that when I was going to school to learn to be a body worker, we used to do experiments where we'd take 2 glasses of water, and we would take 1 glass of water and we would put our hands close around it, just to where it was in the range of our auras. And we would send loving, good energy to the water. Later, you would taste each glass of water, and you could taste the water that was blessed or given the good energy actually tasted better than the other glass of water.
The other thing is, Kalila, the aura doesn't have to be seen to be felt. You can be in the company of somebody. Your friends might say to you, look, this woman or this man, she's amazing. She's a lovely person. And then you meet her or him and you think, well, I don't feel the same. There's something different in you that seems to respond to the energies this person is giving. Now, that's to do with your aura, your personal energies that extends. Before you even touch a person, your aura will have made contact with them. And it helps you to sense an environment. Now, animals are the same. I mean, dogs we know, and cats, but more dogs. They can monitor molecular changes in the atmosphere. So a dog will know when you're not well. And if you notice, or your cats, they will gravitate towards you if you're in pain or you're struggling a little bit. They will know because they can monitor these molecular changes in you, and they will gravitate towards you to give you their energy.
Right.
And
yeah, I've experienced that, yes.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, Prana is another thing we can discuss perhaps later on, because prana is also something I think mediums should be made aware of, particularly if you're developing your skills as a medium, because prana is a subtle agent through which the life of the body is sustained. So the more prana that enters and remains in your body, the higher the quality of your life. A reduction in pranic energy results in the lowering of your vitality and ultimately a deterioration in the quality of your life. So where there is no prana, there is no life. Prana is constantly being fed through the organs of your body, through the aura. And it's important that we understand all this.
So it's very interesting, very, very interesting. A lot of people confuse the aura with other things. Lots of times, as I'm studying with different mediums and so forth, they're talking about reading someone psychically, and you're picking up their auric field. And I'll describe things to people when I'm giving them a reading. I pick up what's going on around you. When we say these things and when we're associating these things with something, literally are our thoughts and our feelings and so forth, and even, maybe things that are mapped out for us that we're manifesting, those things are contained in the aura. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I'm certain that is right, because I said earlier on, the aura is a database of information. And I've made quite an extensive study into this, because when you're working with somebody, and I've said that to you before, you can't expect the spirit world to communicate all the time. It doesn't always work for many different reasons. But once you develop psychically, you learn to home in, so to speak, to the person's aura, and you can glean a lot of information about what they've done, what they're doing now, and what they're going to do in the future, just by connecting with the aura. We might describe it in different ways, the process in different ways, but basically we're talking about the same thing, making a connection with them or with their aura, which is a database. It holds everything that you've done, and more importantly, what you're going to do in the future, as well as your health. It's all in the aura. It's frightening, really, when you encounter some people who look, to all intents and purposes, quite nice and spiritual, but there's something in you that registers that they're not as nice as you think or people think. You have a sense that you get from them, and it's a darkness that will manifest. And some not so nice people have learned how to create a facade around their own aura, so it can glow, have a sort of a false glow that psychics can often be deceived by. So you have to be very careful, even when you're working psychically, because you can misread somebody.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. That's very interesting. And I can pick up on others' energy, but it's so true what you were saying earlier about objects, tables, chairs, these things having an aura. We used to have a witchcraft museum in New Orleans, and it had some very interesting artifacts. And one of the things that it had there was the necromancy wand of Aleister Crowley.
Wow.
It was interesting. Yes. And someone had done the Kirlian photography on this item. And it actually had an aura to it. The aura was very dark, very tight, very compressed. The people of the museums did a lot of cleansing and ritual work on it. When they were done with it, they took another Kirlian picture of it, and the aura was pink and vibrant. And they actually changed the aura around it. I thought that was just amazing.
Stay tuned for more Afterlife Radio.
Step beyond the veil that separates our world from the world of spirits with me, Kalila Smith, as we uncover the mysteries of the afterlife. This is a spiritual journey as we try to discover if life really does continue after the physical death. Are after-death communications real, or do we imagine them? Get my book, Afterlife Mysteries Revealed, and find out. Afterlife Mysteries Revealed, available on Amazon.com by Kalila Smith.
You're listening to Afterlife Radio.
When I first started doing, readings professionally, this is back in the days where I would go to get readings from people. I'd go to the French Quarter, I'd get a reading, and they'd say, well, why aren't you doing this? And I'd go, because I don't want to, because you're doing it. I'm getting it from you. And I'd go round and round with some readers. But I had one time, and one of the first things this reader did was ask me to lay my hands palm down on the table. And when I did this, I had pain shooting up my arms, and I had to disconnect very quickly. And I said, I don't like that. I don't like doing that. What happened there? I was in school, and I was just learning, getting attuned as a Reiki and doing energy work on people. And the reader told me, she said, well, there were some people in here, one was suicidal, one had just lost a job, one was going through a divorce, and she had all of them put their hands on the table. And it left their, impressions of their aura, their energy field on the table. And when I came along and touched it, I picked up on that immediately. You can make, connections that way, and they're not always good. Sometimes, and I even started way back before, we were socially distancing. I was always very leery about, shaking hands, touching people, and that sort of thing, because it was like I tend to, would pick up on emotions and so forth.
And also, if you say you're walking your dog in the woods, in the woodland, early hours of the morning, and there's nobody around, and suddenly your legs seem to will not move as quickly, and you find that your bodily movements have slowed down. And if you look around, you might find there's somebody staring at you from a few yards away, or there is somebody else in the woods that you haven't noticed before, because your aura is affected by people looking at you as well. Now, if you're in a cinema or theater and you're waiting for your friend, you're sitting by yourself, but something makes you feel uncomfortable, and you turn around to look behind you, and you might see somebody, a woman or a man, staring intently at the back of your head. So you are affected by the people in very different ways. And I said earlier on that before you make contact with somebody physically, you've already made contact with them aurically. So it's a protective garment as well. And it's referred to in the Bible. And, the coat has many colors. And when Moses came down from the mountain, they said his face glowed. Now, the North American Indian will have a headdress, multicolored feathers. Now, these feathers represent the different colors in his aura and represent his exalted state in the tribe. Now, also, monks will have a tonsure, a shaven head, because that will expose that part of the aura and also the crown chakra to the cosmos or God consciousness. So, there are lots of different things, and it's a fascinating subject to explore. But the aura it's bare. And you spoke about mudras. When I teach pranayama, but using pranayama or any breathing technique, you have to use the correct mudra, hand movement. And the giving mudra is also a very effective one, particularly for certain kinds of meditation. But we can also have a look at that later on, perhaps.
Yeah, that's an interesting subject, and a very deep subject as well. A lot of people who take yoga think that it's just the positions, it's just a physical thing, and it encompasses so much more. The connections that it makes on so many different levels is amazing. Let's touch a little bit before we finish up with this and go to a commercial. Touch a little bit, because a lot of people don't understand that the aura is different from the chakras.
Yeah.
A lot of people are confused about that, because we have the 7 chakras, and do you care to elaborate a little bit on what the difference would be? What are the chakras as opposed to you've explained the auras, just maybe briefly explain to everyone the chakras.
You're right in saying a lot of people who come to my workshops believe that the aura is an extension of the chakras. It isn't. It's nothing really to do with the chakra system. We know that we have 7 chakras, major chakras, and these chakras are connected to the endocrine glands and nerve plexuses through an extensive system of channels called nadis. Now, nadi means river, only at a more subtle level, and it's along the nadis that pranic energy flows from the chakras to the organs of the physical body. Now, when a child is born, although the 7 chakras are there potentially, only one will function, and this is the one at the base of the spine. It's called Muladhara, and this is the instinctive chakra. This is the one that causes the child to cry, to seek out its mother's breast for milk. It will teach it in a way, it will guide it. But when the child is 2 years old, another chakra begins to open. Rather like a mini flower, its petals begin to open. And this is called Svadhisthana, which means the gate. Now, the gate is also a sort of a manifestation of the aura. It's a protective chakra, but it's when the child is 2, it begins to develop a physical way of life. It starts to learn from its environment. And then when it's 3, the next chakra begins to open. Now, as they ascend the spine, the petals begin to open like mini lotus flowers. And the third one is called Manic Aura. This brings the child a certain kind of awareness. It makes it identify certain people, and it starts to like certain people or dislike certain people. Then when the child is 4, a very important chakra begins to manifest, and that is called Anahata, the heart center. This is the seat of the goddess within the child, and it's also the one that makes the child very sensitive. So if there's any disharmony around the child at the age of 4, disagreements between mum and dad, anything disrupts their emotions, it registers in Anahata, and it will affect them for the rest of their lives. But it also makes them the healer, the sensitive one to people's grievances, people's sadnesses, enables that child to grow up with certain feelings. Then on the 5th year, when the child is 5, the 5th chakra begins to open. This is called Vishuddha. Now, Vishuddha is a very, very important chakra in the manifestation of clairaudience. To anybody who has a propensity towards being clairaudient, the ability to hear supersensual sounds, it's all to do with the 5th chakra in the throat. And I said once before that a lot of clairaudient mediums will have pancreatic problems or thyroid problems. Not always. But then the 6th chakra opens, and this is called Ajna. Now, Ajna is to do with perception, to do with intuition, to do with psychic skills, and clairvoyance is one of them. And then the 7th chakra opens when the child is 7, and this is called Sahasrara. The Sahasrara is to do with cosmic consciousness. And although many people believe that it's only evolved or only opens in highly evolved individuals, people who devote their lives to meditation and prayer will have a very active Sahasrara chakra. So they manifest in a certain way. And although they do affect the aura, they are not the aura themselves. The aura and the chakras do work together. They work as a one happy medium, if you'll excuse the pun. But it's all to do with pranic energy, to do with right perception, right focus, and breathing as well. Sorry for going on a little.
No. It's fascinating. No, it's important that people, because if you're going to talk about one, you really have to bring up the other so that because people do get the two confused. And a lot of people have not studied auras or chakras before. So it's good to clarify that early on so that they understand the difference and gives them a little food for thought, so to speak. But we're going to go to a commercial break right now, and we will be right back.
Submitted for your approval. New Orleans. Seductive, magical, mysterious, and haunted. There is no place on this earth with as much ghost and vampire activity as New Orleans. Imagine, if you will, a tour that takes you to sites in the French Quarter of actual documented hauntings. The Haunted History Tour is just that tour. Every day, every night, all year round. This tour has been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN. And it's available to you. Are there ghosts and vampires in the French Quarter? Find out by taking the tour that everyone is talking about. The Haunted History Tour. For more information, call Haunted History Tours at 861-2727. That's 861-2727. This is not a Halloween spookhouse. This is real.
And we're back. All right, Billy. So you have a couple of exercises or an exercise or two for people to do?
Yeah, useful. I mean, if you're working with in a group, if you're working with a group and you can use a pendulum, you get one of the people in the group to lie down horizontally, and each chakra has a different polarity. In a male, the one between the eyes, the ajna, that turns in a clockwise motion. In a female, it's anti-clockwise. The next one on the throat in a male is anti-clockwise. In a female, it's clockwise, and so on and so forth. So if you lie somebody down and take a pendulum, you can actually douse the individual chakras by just holding the pendulum over each one, starting with the coccyx. I should have said lie them on the stomach, so you can go right down to the base of the spine. And you should find that all these chakras rotate in a different way. Now, they might not all be in sequence. And judging by, going by what people have gone through that day, if they've had a lot of stress or they might be tired, the polarity of the chakras will change. But if you douse them, you'll get a good feel of what movement is in the chakras. Now, sometimes you might find that the chakra movement is not where we think. Sort of, when you follow a chart with the chakras on them, because we're all anatomically different, the chakras might be located in a different position in the body. But it will give you a good idea exactly where the chakras are. And it will also give you a feeling for what is wrong with the person. Some schools of thought, occult schools of thought, believe that when the chakras close down completely, the body will ignite from within, and we have physical spontaneous combustion. Because chakras are often thought to be like mini transformers. They modify the energy, prana, coming into the body. The chakras control it and distribute it throughout the body. Now, I said that they're connected to the endocrine glands and nerve plexuses. So a lot of healing can transpire through the chakra system. But first, to douse them, to get the feeling of their energy and where they are located. Then, if you like, you can actually surround the body with certain crystals. Now, usually I use clear quartz because it is an enhancer of energy. If you surround the body with clear quartz, you'll feel the energy difference. It will infuse your body with energy, and it will also affect the activity in the individual chakras. That's it, by the way.
Wow. That's really very interesting. Very, very interesting. And many years ago, I'd taken a workshop on clearing the chakras, and we used the pendulum to see if the chakras were open, and if the pendulum didn't move, the chakra needed some work to open it back up. And it's all very, very interesting. But yeah, it all connects. Everything's connected. Everything is connected, and if the energy is not flowing, it will manifest as disease in the body or pain or what have you. And you have to make sure that your chakras and your aura are healthy in order for you to be able to function properly. And it's very, very interesting, fascinating subject. So if anybody out there has any questions, please send your questions in to us. We do have an email address for you to send questions to, and it is afterlifemysteries@gmail.com. So if you have questions about anything that you have heard on the shows, or things that you'd like to hear on the show. If there's something you'd like us to talk about, please write to us, and we will address your questions and your concerns and so forth on the shows, and be happy to clarify things if people are confused or just want to hear us talk about something. So again, it's afterlifemysteries@gmail.com. Now, for budding mediums, one of the first exercises you want to do is try to develop being able to feel. Don't worry, people get caught up in wanting to see somebody's aura. It's not so much if you see the aura than if you feel the aura. You really want to be able to feel and establish, making that connection and becoming accustomed to those subtle energetics and becoming sensitive to them. So if you want to attune yourself to that, one of the things that I was taught to do, and I always show it to my students, is, I have people go to a park or a wooded area, somewhere where there's a lot of trees. Now, here in New Orleans, we have a lot of oak trees. What kind of trees are common in your area, Billy? If you're in the UK, what kind of? You have a lot of hardwood trees, I know, but is there any kind of tree in particular? You have oak?
No, I mean, it's quite a mixture. Oak trees are quite common.
Okay. Well, the same here. We have the oak trees, and oak trees are wonderful because they last so long. They get huge, and trees are, of course, living beings. I mean, this is what creates our oxygen for us. These things give us life, and a good exercise to do is to find yourself the biggest oak tree you can find, and very, very slowly move your hands in close to it, but never touch the tree itself. Just slowly move in until you can feel the aura of the tree, and you'll know when you feel it. You can tell when you touch it, and we used to make little balls of energy in our hands, and it's kind of a squishy feeling. You suddenly will feel a little bit of attention to it, and it's almost, I mean, would you call it squishy, Billy? That's an expression I would use, kind of a spongy feeling to it.
Yeah, it's a good way of describing it, I think.
And you want to just kind of hold on to that. And as you're doing this, when you're touching the aura of these trees, especially the oak trees, they're very life-giving. They can be, just like some people use, the crystals to help energize you and rejuvenate your energy. You can do the same thing with trees. It's giving you more life force. It's actually feeding you, much like the pits that you talked about, the apple seeds, putting the apple seeds there, and the aura of the apple seed going to the ones that are dying and giving it energies. The auras of these trees can do the same thing, and it will actually energize you.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And, strangely, I was talking many, many years ago to a guy who was he was a Jesuit priest, and he was one of my early teachers. And he told me that although the oak tree is a very vibrant tree, full of energy, he said the strongest tree to embrace, he said, you'll be surprised, is the apple tree. And if you embrace an apple tree, because the apple is probably one of the oldest trees on the planet, and if you embrace it, you can actually feel the vibrancy, the energy coming from the earth. Now, in yoga, the energy from the earth is called prana shakti, which is kundalini. But if you're doing a meditation and you do it with your back to the tree, you can actually feel your spine being infused with energy. I think it's fascinating.
Oh, it is fascinating. I'm going to try that. I haven't tried it with the spine to the tree, and we don't have any apple trees here, unfortunately. But we have oak trees. We definitely have oak trees here, and they're great for that, I guess, as well. But yeah, I haven't tried that. That's a new way of trying that, is to get the spine against the tree. I'm going to give that a shot. I'm definitely going to give that a shot. All right, so there you have it, guys. Thank you for joining in. Now, Billy, if anybody's interested in learning more about the aura, what is the name of your book again for the auras?
Well, one's called The Magic of the Aura, but the best one, I think, is the Nadi technique, self-healing with the Nadi technique, which is quite an extensive book. It covers quite a broad area of self-improvement.
Both fascinating. Yes, the naughty technique is, it's useful for anybody, mediums, healers, what have you. It's they're both great books, but yeah, the naughty technique really breaks it down, and it's incredible. And they can get this on Amazon, or do they come to your? What is your website? Go ahead and let
Well,
everybody know what your website is.
my website's down at the moment. I'm having a new one constructed. It's billyroberts.co.uk. But people can email me at billyroberts@sky.com, and they can get signed copies from me of any of my books.
There you go. There you go, folks. There you go. And we're both on Facebook. Look us up, Billy Roberts and Kalila Smith. And stay tuned for another episode coming to you live from New Orleans and the UK of the Afterlife Radio. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.